On the 15th of November 2022, the world's population reached 8 billion people. With the world's population expected to reach 9 billion in 2037 according to the UN, this is a sign that the population growth rate is slowing. China has held the title of world's most populated country for hundreds of years, with over 1.4 billion people right now. Yet, it will not hold this position for much longer, as there is a country closing up on it. This country is India, and it is expected to overtake China in 2023 as the most populated country in the world. This, although at first sight may not seem like much, may be a signal of things that matter. The question of India's permanency in the United Nations Security Council, as China no longer holds the world's largest population, will bring up doubts. Due to the current status of the permanent seat holders in the UN Security Council, India will be far more likely to utilize its population numbers as an argument for holding a permanent seat. This would give it veto power in important United Nations Security Council resolutions. The reason why India caught up so fast to China's population throughout the last decades is due to policies taken on by the Chinese Communist Party to control population growth. These policies were positioned into a high priority for the leadership after a famine in the late 1950s, caused by the Great Leap Forward movement. Although the one-child policy is amongst the most famous of these, which limited most families in China to one child each in the 1980s, according to demographers, the later, longer, fewer campaign in the 1960s had the biggest effect. This campaign aimed for later marriages, longer gaps between children, and to generally have fewer of them. This was good economically in the beginning, as with fewer children, a family could invest more in each of them. However, this is not without its setbacks. As the parents would grow older and would eventually retire and stop working, this is then up to the kids, which although had a lot invested in them when young, would have to maintain the older generations between less people, therefore straining the smaller generation. Because of this, the main pension fund in China may run out by 2035. Population growth is an important factor in overall economic growth, and may even contribute to increased growth in per capita output in some cases if the demand for better services grows. As the available workforce grows, with there being an increased number of youth, then more people can be directed towards developmental activities. However, it is very important that in order to fully yield the positive effects from a growing population, the nation must have sound policies. Therefore, a big burden of competence is put upon those in charge to make sure that the rise in population does not rapidly turn into overpopulation. Overpopulation is a very big problem according to some scholars, as one of the biggest impacts it can have is on climate change, as increased use of fossil fuels since the mid-19th century in overpopulated regions around the globe caused a great release of CO2 into the atmosphere. Overpopulation accelerates agricultural practices, which leads to enhanced emission of greenhouse gases. An example of this includes methane, which is emitted in rice agricultural practices and livestock. However, as scientific knowledge and technological expertise increases over time, creating food in comparison to the amount of greenhouse gases it emits can be greatly reduced. Understanding the processes food goes through and how to limit their emissions at each point is one of several options, as well as incentivizing sustainable agriculture on a national level. Therefore, effective awareness programs about population control, education in rural regions, and impartial sharing of resources must be ensured so that population explosions can be controlled. Unfortunately, the average person on Earth consumes at a rate over 50% above a sustainable level. This brings about scarcity and has the potential to trigger an increase in violence and political unrest. We're already seeing wars fought over water, land, and energy resources in the Middle East and other regions, and the turmoil is likely to increase as the global population grows even larger. Some examples of this include South Sudan water crisis, which is leading to increased violence and abuse cases. The Darfur conflict also illustrates the increase in violence and conflict over resources, as environmental degradation and competition over resources increases, so as communal conflict in Darfur, a region in western Sudan. Although overpopulation seems to be an issue with big side effects, luckily there are ways to prevent it from happening. It is crucial to take an approach that empowers. The combined efforts of spreading knowledge about family planning, increasing agency amongst women throughout the world, and debunking widely held myths will significantly impact the trajectory of the world's population. Some government policies that force people to do things may be too detrimental. For example, the policies in China in the last decades. However, general free education on these issues, the impacts they have, and how everybody can address them can help shape the future, and many governments and leaders around the world should consider this and implement it, as in the long run, education could be far more beneficial for everybody. As much as China may have some demographic issues, it is still undoubtedly one of the fastest growing powers to emerge in the 20th and 21st century. Its economic growth throughout the last decades has been unmatched, even if it has slowed down recently. Check out this video here to understand how and why China got to the position and international political and economic leverage it has today.